It's currently Tuesday, October 28th at the time of writing this script, and I, Isaac Punts, feel like I have just seen one of, if not the worst weekend of football in my entire life. And while there's a pinch of bias going through this, there is, through some light research, some truth that we really may have witnessed a true phenomenon in the NFL. But to truly understand why that might be the case, I need to add some context. First, this is week 8, and for those who don't really keep up with the ebb and flow of NFL interest levels, this is typically when it's going to start bottoming out for the NFL season. This is for a number of reasons, but generally it's just that most of the games around this time, I don't want to say aren't important, but are really too hard to parse out how it's going to affect things like postseason play or draft order. Like whether a team is going from 3-4 to 4-4 or 5-2 to 5-3, it just doesn't really have huge implications on the postseason play right this second, even though at the end of the season we will look back and think about how important winning or losing some of these games could be. On top of that, most people already sort of know where teams are at. Like this far, teams have already sorted themselves out, with 1 and 2 loss teams at this point proving to be formidable playoff frontrunners, 3 and 4 loss teams being right in the mix with a chance to go either way, and of course the Chiefs being the exception because they just got back healthy and now look better than previous years. And then of course teams who have somehow already gotten to 5 losses are looking ahead to next year with a couple 7-loss teams in the mix just to spice things up. And while yes, this can get shaken up as teams can go on losing streaks, lose key players to injuries, or get key players back, I think as a general rule by this point in the season, you already have a pretty good idea of what to expect, which is why interest levels can get low. Now, what holds up interest levels, just like any sport, is division rivalries and the general excitement of games, which is where this weekend hits a brand new low. We open up with a Thursday night game, and this one already has had some doubts. The Vikings are on their back foot with their quarterback now being a backup, Carson Wentz, and the Chargers are starting off, I wouldn't say hot, but at least warm. But what would happen is just an absolute stinker. Those who stayed up to watch it just saw the Vikings trotting out Carson Wentz to get abused for 4 quarters and looking like he was in excruciating pain every single drive, while the Chargers simply ran away with the game and one that could have been over at halftime in a lopsided 27-point victory that looked so much worse when you actually watch the game than if you just check the box score. So wiping away that random Thursday night blowout, we all turned our eyes to the 1 o'clock slate of games. The Dolphins and Falcons was going to be a wash as the Falcons decided to simply not show up as they let a 1-6 Dolphins team just blow them out of the water in a 34-10 victory. And while the Dolphins win wasn't that expected, holy shit, the Eagles and Bills both won the games that they were expected to in convincing fashion. The Eagles added some salt to the wound by injuring the most exciting player to watch on the Giants roster and officially ending their season even more than it already was, and the Bills, playing against the Panthers backup quarterback, just abused them, as both of these games you would turn off by halftime. Hell, the only 2 games out of this time slot that were even remotely watchable as far as scores are concerned was the Bears taking on the Ravens, where at least it was a 3-point game at the start of the 4th before the Bears take a handful of laxatives to shit the bed with and let the Ravens, who are all but dead in the water at this point, get a decisive 14-point win as they move the Bears further away from their dreams of relevancy. And the other game, which is where a little bit of my bias comes in, is when randomly the only good game this weekend came in the 1 p.m. slot where the Jets and Bengals, who are missing their starting quarterback, randomly decide to have a shootout of the year, with the Jets putting up 23 fourth quarter points in a gutsy 39-38 win that came down to the absolute wire. The problem with this, of course, is A, one of the team's season is pretty much already over as the Jets were 0-7 coming into this, and B, the other team is missing their starting quarterback, so even though it was fun to watch for everybody who was not a Bengals fan, you're still left with this feeling of so what at the end. Then the 4 o'clock slate came around and the 49ers decided to also not show up as the Texans had their way with them for 4 quarters as this game came down to just bleeding the entire 4th out. And then the Buccaneers did what they were supposed to do against the Saints in a 20-point victory, while the Broncos were completely unstopped by the Cowboys that also came down to a 20-point victory that just makes you feel nothing unless you're a Broncos fan. And of course, the other expected blowout happened as the Colts, who were red hot, trampled the Titans by 24 points. As I was trying to watch these games, I pretty much all had them turned off by the middle of the third, and I turned my attention to what was hopefully going to be a good Sunday night football game. And while this matchup, one featuring Aaron Rodgers taking on his whole team, did deliver for 3 quarters, the fourth quarter opened up like this. The Packers score to take the lead. 4 minutes after that, they score again to go up by 10. And then they kick a field goal to go up by 13. And then they kick another one to go up by 16, while the Steelers' drives looked like going for -3 yards in punting, -9 yards in punting, 2 yards and fumbling it away, as the game went from one that was somewhat interesting and coming down to the wire all the way to out of reach and you turn your TV off in the blink of an eye. And I wish I could say Monday night's game was better, but the Chiefs came out against a Marcus Mariota-led Commanders team and just beat the dog shit out of them for another 21-point slaughtering, meaning that the average margin of victory for the weekend games was 18.5 points, with the only watchable games being between teams that pretty much have no postseason hopes, unless you're like me and hoping the Bengals can stay afloat till Burrow comes back, but even then, our defense realistically isn't good enough to get us anywhere in the postseason. And while you might say, Isaac, so what? None of the games are particularly fun to watch. Does it really make it that bad of a weekend? And to that I'd say it makes it pretty bad, but there was an extra layer. Because if the games weren't just good, that's one thing. But it felt like you couldn't watch a single game without getting a heaping dose of ref ball on top of it. I mean, let's look at the Eagles and Giants game. It was plagued with random whistle shenanigans, with Elliott's kick being blown dead, but then somehow not being blown dead, the tush-push fumble somehow being blown dead without ever actually having a whistle being blown during the play. And then when we jumped to the Buccaneers game, they had a fumble 6 that somehow got wiped away. The Bears got screwed because Huntley got knocked down by his own teammate, but the Bears player punched the ball out when he stood up, but the ref said he gave himself up, which just wasn't true. I mean, I think this player touched him, making him down by contact, but once again, that's not what was called. And then when we go to the Packers and Steelers game, there's this painfully obvious missed encroachment that cost the Steelers a possession. The Chiefs game was also horrendous, with this terrible spot for a first down, which was happening inside of one of the goofiest games you've ever seen, with a bunch of ugly picks and a ball literally bouncing off of Debo's face mask to give an interception to the other team, with Patrick Mahomes even throwing 2 picks in this game. And then at the end of the game, when the Commanders had but a sliver of hope to get back in, the refs erase a huge sack to essentially just end the game on one of the softest personal foul calls I've ever seen. So not only was the weekend slate injury-ridden, uninteresting, and mostly over by halftime or early in the third quarter for all but one game, but on top of that, too many of the games were filled with just some of the most egregious reffing mistakes you've ever seen. And that makes it, in my opinion, one of the worst weekends of NFL football I have ever watched. I'd love to know what you guys think. If you can think of a specific weekend that's worse than this one, please let me know in the comments, because I really don't think one exists, and if there is one, I need to go look at it.